Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can.
In the late 1960s, I was a teenager. The Vietnam War was festering, the Cold War was at a low boil, and the hippie movement was in full swing. The hippies were the younger generation. They were the children of the World War II generation. They perhaps viewed themselves as the first generation of what should be the post-warfare age. Surely humanity must have learned its lesson from World War II. The hippies, being in their teens and 20s, of course knew more than their parents. The World War II generation might not have been able to avoid wars, but the younger generation now knew better. The hippies were young and idealistic. They knew better than to succumb to the materialism and nationalism that led to the big war. They were lefty liberal, anti-war, and anti-materialistic. One evening in our suburban home in southern Indiana, I remember having a conversation with my dad about the hippie philosophy. I don't remember what started the conversation. I remember thinking that I was versed enough on the subject to talk about it. I remember thinking that there was merit to the hippie philosophy and that Dad might grok it. After all, it was pretty much the same thing I was being taught in Sunday school. So I presented the ideas to Dad. I'm paraphrasing here. I said, "What if we all didn't constantly strive to be rich? Surely we produce enough that all could have a middle-class lifestyle. What if we all just shared?" And Dad said, "It'll never work." I was surprised by his response, and I wasn't surprised. I wasn't surprised because I realized that what I presented would naturally have immediately sounded to him like the typical pinko communism. I was surprised in that what I had presented was actually also pretty much the same philosophy that he was hauling me to church to hear. In Sunday school, I was being taught the Jesus message. A prominent feature of the Jesus message is the eschewing of the material. We are not to build up wealth in this world. We are to focus on the spiritual world to come. We are supposed to give up our material possessions and give no thought for the morrow. It is written that it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. Another major element of the Jesus message is unconditional sharing. If someone asks for your cloak, you're supposed to give it to him along with your coat. Give to every man that asketh of thee. Sell what you have and give to the poor. The hippie message I had related to my father is quite similar to the Jesus message. How is it that he would so quickly dismiss it? The socialist/communist message also deprecates materialism. Wealth results in inequality that oppresses the working class. Real value is in the products of labor, which are to be shared communally, from each according to ability, to each according to need. So the Jesus message, hippie philosophy, and communism are all pretty much peas in the same pod. There's hardly any difference between if a man asks for your cloak, give to him also your coat, and from each according to ability, to each according to need. The Jesus message is communistic. And by dismissing hippie communism, my father had unwittingly undermined the Jesus message. And he was right. You can't eschew the material. You are material. You are a physical body that requires food, water, and shelter to continue living. To totally renounce the material is to renounce your own life. Possession of material things is necessary. So how much individual material wealth is appropriate? With greater wealth comes security and comfort. Who is to judge how much we each should own? You? Me? The Pope? If we are to share all things equally and give to everyone who asks, Then what about the bums and con men? Should they be given all they ask? Should they be given an equal share? What incentive is there to be productive when you can get what everyone else has simply by asking or by entitlement? Ethical principles on wealth and sharing evolved in humans long before the invention of writing. The Jesus message just takes those principles and exaggerates them to unrealistic ideals. Perhaps the author of the Jesus message thought that an over-the-top presentation was necessary in order for it to have sufficient impact. Sure, we need to share in order to have a healthy society. An extreme pursuit of the material can also be unhealthy. But there are physical world complications that the Jesus message ignores and denies. The Jesus message on wealth and sharing is flawed, incomplete, and unrealistic. It is not divine.